Today, we are going to be learning about how to develop self-directed learners. And this is something that comes up when we're discussing students' performance in courses and their ability to independently direct their learning and to develop those skills. My name is Yvonne Johnson, and I know most of you or have worked with you in the past. It's great to see everyone online today, and welcome to those who are watching the recording after the live session today. I've been teaching face-to-face hybrid and various types of face-to-face formats for more than 15 years, and I teach accelerated as well as the full 16-week course delivery models. And the Center for Innovative Teaching and Learning, I'm the multimodal teaching coordinator, and I completed the AQ Distinguished Teaching Scholar Program. And I also teach research courses for the College of Health and Human Sciences, and I've taught for the College of Educational Technology Research and Assessments and other universities. To continue building that community, let's do some introductions, and we could do these verbally if you want to engage your mic, or you can share in the chat. But let me just go down the list of participants here. I'll just go in the order that they show on my screen. Okay, Elise, how are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
Thank you. So would you go ahead and introduce yourself, please?
Sure. My name is Elise. I work at the School of Nursing. I teach a couple of different things. Right now I'm teaching fundamentals clinical, and I've been teaching mental health clinical as well. And then after spring break, I'm going to teach in the RN to BS program, which is there's are already nurses with nursing degrees or just getting a bachelor's degree. So it'll be my first time teaching that. And what do I know about the cycle of self-directed learning? I'm not really sure. I think that's why I'm here. I have a group of in my mental health clinical where I'd like them to be more self-directed. So hopefully I can learn more about that today.
Okay, terrific. Yes, we will talk about that cycle and some techniques that you can use. Great, thank you, Elise, and welcome. Jeanette, go ahead, please.
Hi, I'm Jeanette Rossetti. I'm a presidential teaching professor, and I also teach at the School of Nursing. And I teach undergraduate as well, psychiatric nursing in the theory, and also now back into clinical. And I sure agree with Elise that being self-directed, I think, is important everywhere, but particularly in clinical, it's really so important. So yeah, I'm here. I just love to attend things with CITL and just keep having something really positive to engage in and learn. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jeanette.
Yep.
And Farah, go ahead, please.
Hi, everyone. My name is Farah Ishak. I'm an assistant professor of sport management in the Department of Kinesiology and Physical Education. Currently teaching a sport event and facility management class along with an administration of intercollegiate athletics course. And in terms of the cycle of self-directed learning, I'm not too familiar with the cycle, so looking forward to learning more about it and seeing how that can be applied in the classroom.
Okay, terrific. Thank you, Farah. And Lynn, go ahead, please.
Hi, everyone. My name is Lynn Herman, and I am an associate professor of public health and health education. And I teach our health promotion courses at the grad and undergrad levels. And I don't know about the cycle of self-directed learning, but I have noticed a trend in our students, especially undergrad, to kind of want to be told what to do versus them kind of finding their own way to learning something. So that's why I'm here.
Okay, great. Thank you, Lynn. And we will talk about some techniques that you can build into your teaching to help move the students along with that. Great. Okay, Marcella, go ahead, please.
Hey everyone, my name is Marcella Otto and I'm just as Farah in the kinesiology and physical education department, also within sport management specifically. And I'm currently teaching the undergrad and graduate class in sport marketing. I'm a second-year assistant professor, and just as a lot of others have already voiced, I'm also intrigued as to learn more what self-directed learning really means and how we can apply within the classroom, because I don't really know, and that's why I signed up for this course. Thanks, Yvonne.
It's terrific. Thank you, Marcella. Appreciate it. Thanks, everyone, for sharing your backgrounds and knowledge about the self-directed learning cycle. It's great to have a variety of disciplines represented today, because that creates a really strong foundation for constructing knowledge in the group. So that's terrific. Welcome, everyone. And today we're going to be talking about metacognition, the growth mindset, and the self-directed learning cycle. And at the end of the workshop, you will be able to define the term metacognition, explain the concept of a growth mindset, and explain how the self-directed learning cycle could be used in one of your courses, or how you could use some of these techniques that we're going to be talking about today. And metacognition is something that you hear people who study pedagogy and andragogy in the different teaching disciplines and focus, you hear them talk about it. It's the process of reflecting on and directing your own thinking, and thinking about your thinking and how you learn, and kind of taking a step back and considering yourself as a learner. And these are skills that people develop over many years in their life. I know when I first heard the concept many years ago in a class, I was a little, I wasn't quite sure what to think about that. But now it's, I've learned about it for so long that it's just part of natural process of the discussions in education. But it's important for students to reflect and think about their own learning and the techniques that they're using, struggles that they may be having, what they might do to change to be more successful, things like that. And we'll talk about some simple guided questions that you can use to help students kind of facilitate that process of metacognition. And I use reflection in all of my courses, and I use it regularly for almost every assignment. And I will ask the students to think about how they can use the information that they learn from an assignment, apply it in future courses, in their profession, things like that. I'll ask them about how they went through that process of learning certain complex concepts. What struggles did they have? What things could they do differently next time? And I build it into the assignments, and you could build some of those simple techniques into your assignments to facilitate them considering metacognition, and then to help them be successful in that self-directed learning cycle. And just by a show of hands, how many people have heard about the growth mindset? Raise your hand if you've heard about that. Okay, the growth mindset is what an individual believes about their own abilities and intelligence. And we'll talk about some characteristics of a growth mindset compared to a fixed mindset. And the growth mindset is very important in terms of students believing that they can be successful in learning new content and information. And when you think about students that have a growth mindset, some of the characteristics of that growth mindset is that their goal is to learn. And we all know that part of learning is that there are going to be challenges. There are going to be concepts that we really struggle with. There are going to be other concepts that we breeze through and are not challenged as much by. If a student has a growth mindset, they embrace those challenges, and then they try to think about how can they persist through these challenges. If there's a setback, how can they plow through that? Is there a different way that they can approach this to be successful? Students with a growth mindset will see that their effort is a path to mastery. So they believe that if they work at something, they work at learning this concept, practicing these skills, that they will become more proficient at these skills, or become more knowledgeable about a certain concept over time. They believe that their work will help them reach mastery. And so they continue to work at it. And they also take feedback on their performance, and they learn from it. And so I taught a feedback session a month or so ago. And, we talked about professors providing feedback and whether or not students act upon that feedback. And what you can do is, when you provide feedback, a student with a growth mindset will take that and they will think about how they can make their work better based upon the feedback that they got from the professor. And to make sure that, or to encourage students to act on feedback, what you can do is build them into the next version of an assignment, or into the next assignment, assess whether or not they have incorporated feedback into the next assignment. So if you suggested, for instance, I teach research proposal courses, and so I'll provide feedback on a research question, or a research method or something, and then I will ask the students in their subsequent work to have addressed the suggestions that I made. And if they don't, then they wouldn't get points because they submitted the same information. So if you integrate the feedback and acting upon it into your grading, then students are more likely to act upon it. But students with a growth mindset try to learn from the feedback. They take it, they read it, and they take action on it. And they also find inspiration in the success of others. If they see others in their class or others in their department who are successful in these complex, really difficult courses, or that they're proficient in mastering very complicated nursing practices, let's say, then students with a growth mindset would be inspired by that. And they would say, well, I watched this student, and I watched the professor, and, they were successful in dealing with all of this. And so that inspires me, that I know that I can do this. So those are characteristics of students with a growth mindset. And those characteristics are important in students feeling and believing that they can be successful in learning new information, new skills, and continuing to persist through challenges that we all know are inherent in the learning process. And each year, our courses are going to be more challenging. And so if we can help them to build that growth mindset from their first courses, at NIU, if they didn't come in with it, if you can expose them to it in their first courses and continue to hone that, then hopefully they will develop that growth mindset as they go along. And last semester I taught the UNIV 101 course for the first time. And I was excited to be able to connect with first semester freshmen because my experience has always been with graduate students. And I really wanted to see I really wanted to connect with those first semester freshmen to, see how I could help them to develop some of these techniques and mindsets that can help them be successful. And we did talk about growth mindset and fixed mindset in that course. And I think it was important for some of them. They hadn't really realized that they had a fixed mindset. And a fixed mindset, characteristics of students with a fixed mindset would include they want to look smart. And so they might feel uncomfortable asking a question because they might feel that if they ask a question, then maybe they don't look as smart. But one of the things that you can do is, make sure that from the beginning of the course, you tell them, this is a learning environment, please ask questions. It's really important that if you're struggling with the concept or you don't understand how to fulfill one of these clinical requirements, then please ask, because you as the professor are there to help them, and we have resources at NIU to help them as well. Students with a fixed mindset might also avoid challenges because they might feel that maybe they're insecure in their feelings. They don't feel competent in a certain action area that they're supposed to be performing on. And so they avoid it instead of facing it directly and persisting through it. They might give up easily because somewhere in the back of their mind, they might think, well, this is really difficult. It's complicated. I have no knowledge of this whatsoever. And they might think there's just absolutely no way that they can learn this material or these clinical procedures or conference scheduling type techniques. So they might give up because they just don't feel like they can do it. They don't believe that they can do it. And because somewhere in their mind, they don't believe that they can do it, then they might not see that there's a point to their effort, that they would work really, really hard and just never, they don't believe that effort would produce mastery. And they might not look at the feedback, and they might feel threatened by the success of others. And you can see how these characteristics contrast with the characteristics that we talked about for the growth mindset. And we're going to look at instructional techniques that you can use to foster a growth mindset, because we want to make sure that students know that we can kind of facilitate them developing this growth mindset. When we're instructing and students are developing their skills and continuing to advance their skills and knowledge, we can praise that process, and you could incorporate formative assignments. Take a large project and break it into formative assignments, smaller projects, and then praise their process, how they're doing on each consecutive part of that process, rather than just waiting until the end of a major project and providing praise on that. So you're praising that process. Yes, you did a great job of assessing this particular concept or developing these particular clinical procedures. And keep working at the appropriate techniques for drawing blood or for injections or whatever. But you're not waiting until the very end when they have their final assessment. And communicating realistic expectations of the outcomes is important. When you as the instructor communicate realistic expectations of outcomes, then students can see, okay, you know, I'm expected to be able to correctly assess a person's blood pressure, or I am expected to correctly use this particular this particular technology tool or something. And your expectations are realistic, and then students will feel more like they can achieve those expectations. And they're more likely to see it from a growth mindset that, yes, I can do this. That's realistic. It aligns with professional standards that I'll be expected to adhere to in the field. And so that communication of the realistic expectations is important. If you have a standard that is way above what would be a standard for a certain task, for instance, maybe they have to, there was one instructor who had an assignment that the students had to write a 50-page paper, and it was on some kind of a research topic. And at one point, one of the colleagues said, well, why do you have students do this? What's the point of that? And the instructor said, well, you know, I had to do it when I was a student, and so I'm making my students do it. And there really wasn't a realistic reason or a practical reason. It was just that this person was requiring this huge paper. Now, if that was something that would be required in their profession or in your discipline, that makes sense. But for that particular situation, it wasn't realistic. And so the students were, you know, they weren't likely to be engaged in that and work as hard at it. And they might go more with that fixed mindset on that they didn't see that the effort was really worth the outcome. And we want to establish a culture that promotes effort, learning, and resilience. And by praising the process and the effort and, you know, praising across the various students, making sure, you know, it's not always the same couple of students that get the praise. So, you know, maybe I really struggled with a certain formula. I just had problems with that for a few weeks in the class, and then some light bulb went on, and I really got it. And so then, you know, say, oh, you know, that's terrific. You know, I can tell that you have really gained an understanding of this formula and that you've become proficient in it. So, you know, great job. All that work paid off. And so that's going to help me. It's going to promote my effort. I'll say, okay, you know, it worked. I became proficient at this, and I learned it. Now I understand it, and I'm going to keep working through this. And you also want to, and I will share this URL after the session that's promoting self-talk, positive self-talk, because we want students to realize that, you know, they come out of high school with certain techniques, knowledge, and there's going to be, you know, challenges and growing pains in college. I mean, we're taking them to new levels, to new disciplines that they haven't had any exposure to. And so we want to keep that positive self-talk going so that they will try these new things and won't be defeated before they even really try to work on something new or to learn work through a challenging process. And now just to have a point of discussion in terms of the instructional techniques that might foster a growth mindset. Could you share something that you might do in your classes to foster a growth mindset? Does anybody have any examples of what they do to try to encourage students to believe that they can be successful, to continue through those challenging? Okay, so let's see. See, somebody has their hand up. Let's see. Okay, go ahead, Lynn.
So I usually have students before we really get into the lecture of the week. I teach online weekly modules where I ask them a question about the topic to kind of make them feel like, oh, I actually do know a little bit about something about this topic, even though I might not know everything, so that they then take their knowledge that they already have and bring that into the new information that they'll be learning.
That's a terrific example, Lynn. Thank you for sharing that. And I do the same thing. I teach a qualitative research course, and the course I teach follows a quantitative research course. And often my students have more familiarity with the quantitative research than the qualitative. And what I'll do is I'll ask some questions to sort of ferret out their experience that they have with qualitative research that they didn't really realize that they had, and then connect it to the content. So like Lynn said, kind of connecting their experience to what you're going to be talking about, so that they believe, oh yes, I do know something about this and I can build upon that. Okay, great. Thank you, Lynn. Appreciate it. And then the self-directed learning cycle. It's the students' belief about their intelligence and learning. And we're going to talk about the different phases of the self-directed learning cycle and techniques that you can use to move students through this cycle in the class. And I build these little techniques into my courses, and it moves students through the process, and they're more likely to be independent learners and regulate their own learning. You know, their skills develop over time, but when you build it into the process, then you'll see that as the semester progresses, that they're becoming more and more self-regulated and independent. And the first part of that self-directed learning cycle is that the student needs to be able to assess the task. And when they're assessing a task, they may not do it the way you think they would do it. And sometimes faculty will say, well, I received these assignments and they just don't address what I requested. You know, they don't address the instructions that I provided, and they don't address the goals of the assignment. I just don't know why I got this type of work when I provided these instructions. And students may have read the instructions, or they might have completed, they may have read the instructions, but they also might have completed the assignment based upon prior educational experience. So if you have students who are looking at the assignments, but they go back to their experience from high school or from introductory courses, they may produce a different product than you really want. So they may think that, okay, I'm supposed to write a paper about this nursing topic or this kinesiology topic, or so they know that they have a written assignment, and they go back to their prior experience and they say, okay, I'm supposed to share everything I know about this topic. because that's what we were expected to do in my prior course, or that's what we were expected to do in high school. Or I learned these techniques as a freshman, and so I'm still doing them as a sophomore or a junior. And so that means that they incorrectly assessed what they were supposed to do for the assignment. And if they incorrectly assess what they're supposed to do for the assignment, then clearly they probably aren't going to be very successful on the assignment. And assessing the task, there's research that shows that this first stage of the self-directed learning cycle is not always a natural step for students. And someone in their introduction said that students wanted to be told what to do rather than to independently go through the assignments and the course. And so what we can do is to sort of facilitate that process by the way that we design our assignments and our courses. And so to help them assess the task, you could ask them questions about when you have an assignment, let's say you posted it on Blackboard, and you have instructions and you think that they're clear. But what you could do is have the assignment instructions up in the course, whether it's online or you're face-to-face, and just do sort of a quick exercise where you ask them, you're sort of guiding them through assessing this task. And so they need to be able to identify what's the goal of this assignment. Am I supposed to memorize terms or in definitions, or am I supposed to be able to explain complex relationships or causal impact between different variables? And if they're not identifying those key goals and aspects of the assignment during that assessment phase, then they could produce something that doesn't really look anything like you thought you were going to receive from the students. And so you as a faculty member can incorporate sort of a quick task assessment into their planning for the assignments to help them develop those habits. And then over time, they won't need as much of that sort of structure, and they'll become more independent and self-regulated. And when you conduct one of these guided assessments of the task activities, you can provide students feedback on their task assessment and say, okay, you've said that you're going to write a paper about the historical events of this particular time period. And so you as the professor say, okay, look carefully at the assignment instructions. And the assignment instructions said, explain what was the impact of one of these historical events on a certain aspect of society. So the students hadn't really focused on the impact part. And so you can provide them feedback and say, okay, be sure you address the feedback, the impact. And so this is something you can guide them through. Has anybody tried this in a class that they teach? To kind of go through assessing the task to see how students are kind of understanding the task before they actually complete the assignment?
I only do a syllabus quiz, but not for assignments.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. And then the next phase of that self-directed cycle is that they need to evaluate their own strengths and weaknesses. And research has shown that people aren't that good at assessing their own strengths and weaknesses in terms of how they'll perform on a certain task. And the research shows us that students that are the most competent and knowledgeable and most proficient in the certain topic or discipline that you're studying are more effective at assessing their own strengths and weaknesses. But students or people who they're novice, they're not as effective at evaluating their own strengths and weaknesses. And it could be because they really don't know what's involved in this more advanced material that you're covering. So they say, well, I can demonstrate that that method in clinical. I know they kind of have maybe a broad understanding of it, but then when it gets to those really intricate details, they really don't have an understanding of that. And because they don't know that, they may incorrectly assess and think, oh, well, I'll do fine on this clinical because, I have a broad understanding of this, and they don't realize that it's kind of a high level and not really into the detail level that they need to know. So they will be overestimating their success that they expect on the assignment. And then when they get their grade back, they say, gosh, I don't understand. I felt like I was really ready for this and I felt like I understood it. So what we can do is to give practice tests and go over those and explain why certain things were wrong. In class activities, we're providing the feedback and then asking them to incorporate it so that the next time they do it, they're more successful. And students that are not holistically evaluating their own strengths and weaknesses may wait till the last minute to complete an assignment because they think, oh, I have these 4 assignments this week. And this particular one's not that hard. I'm pretty good at that, organizing that conference or whatever. And so, I'll kind of wait till the last minute for that one because I need to put more effort into these other ones. But then when they get to actually completing that assignment, they realize, oh my goodness, this is much more involved and I didn't really leave myself enough time. And in my qualitative research class where they conduct interviews and data analysis and write up a research proposal and things like that, I explained to the students that, these projects and these assignments they take a lot of time. So I'll give them maybe 4 weeks, I'll assign something, talk about it, and maybe they have 4 weeks to complete it. But always remind them, do not wait till the last minute because this is not the kind of assignment or course where you can wait till the last minute because you just can't throw this stuff together. And so if we can help students to understand during that task analysis, that task assessment, the complexity and the effort that's going to be required and the time required, then hopefully they will start the project early enough that they can be successful. And if students don't realize the skills required for an assignment, and their skills are not necessarily aligned with what's required for the assignment, they might think that they're going to be successful when they don't realize they really hadn't developed those skills yet. For example, if this is a very simple example, but if they're very proficient at highlighting the key information in a text or in a journal article, they'll say, oh, I got this covered. I can be successful on that assignment. But what you really wanted them to do was explain the complex relationships between those concepts or terms that they had highlighted. Well, that's going to require a lot more in-depth analysis and studying than highlighting the key concepts. And so if they're not aware of this, the skills that they need to use to complete this assignment, then they're not conducting a realistic, they might not be conducting a realistic evaluation of their skills. And then planning an effective approach is important for students to be successful and to be self-directed. And things that can come up in the planning stage is that they might not really plan. They might just say, okay, you know, I have this assignment and it's due on Friday, and so I'll just do it. They don't analyze it and plan to lay out what they need to do to be successful on this project. And so some students won't plan enough to address the task or the depth of the complexities, or they might plan inappropriately because they didn't really go through and complete that task analysis and things like that. So you can build in planning into an overview assignment, or maybe you can have them develop a timeline for how they're going to successfully complete a certain project in your course. And so instead of saying, okay, we have this big project due at the end of the semester, you have 10 weeks to work on it, go forth, you're all going to be great. But if you as a professor can build in these interim steps and maybe even ask them to develop a timeline and help them review the assignment and identify things that they are going to need to be successful in the on the assignment, and then they complete the assignment. So as an example, maybe I have an assignment, a complex chemistry assignment where I need to use certain formulas and equations and things. And so I think, okay, I have these problems to do. So I'll just start working on them and just keep plowing through. And, I run into some challenges, and I just keep kind of using the same old approach, and I'm not really successful. But if I planned, then I would look at the overall assignment and review it, look for, what aspects, what skills, what information do I need to be successful in solving these complex problems? Do I need to get some support? If I wait till the night before something is due, it's not likely that I'm going to be able to get the support if I need to go to the tutor or get a partner or something like that. So what I do is I build these different phases of planning into the course assignments, and I'll have some small group discussion boards where I will have students share their plan. Okay, they're planning for these interviews. Okay, have them share their plan, the different aspects that they're supposed to be addressing, and discuss with their small group. And then they can get feedback from their small group on, oh, I had the same challenge and this is how I handled it. Or you might want to consider giving yourself more time, because what I found was transcribing took longer than I really thought it was going to. So that's part of kind of building the planning into the way that you're teaching and designing the course. And novices tend to not identify, they don't realize how much time a project is going to take because they've not gone through it. And so that's where bouncing it off other people and getting feedback from the professor can help them, because we can point out, well, this is going to take more time because you have to do these things when you're completing the project. And if the students know that there's going to be challenges or there's resources to support them, then they're not going to possibly be wasting as much time just trying to do something and they really don't know how to do it. And one of the things that is wonderful at NIU is we have a tremendous amount of support for students. And I was fortunate that when teaching that UNIV 101 course, I was able to share all of those student success resources and tutorial support and all of that. And I would encourage you all to share that as well, because we really do have tremendous support to help students at NIU. And I'm very proud of that, our efforts here for that. And another aspect of the self-directed learning cycle is monitoring performance. And that's not always a natural thing for students to do either. So, if you think about, they assess the task, they identify their strengths and weaknesses, they're going to develop a plan, and now they need to monitor their performance. And when they're monitoring, it's get back to that metacognition, where we're thinking about our thinking, we're thinking about how we are handling this project. And you can ask simple questions like, is this plan working for me? The student could ask themselves that. Do they need to adjust the plan to be more productive? Can they get some support from the professor or the teaching assistant or the writing center or the math labs or science labs, nursing labs? And maybe they didn't study enough, and so they need to go back and kind of learn more about certain concepts. But if students are not monitoring their performance, then they're not getting those opportunities to say, okay, you know what, I tried this technique and it didn't work so well. And I tried this technique and it worked a little better, but you know what, maybe I need to ask the professor. Maybe I need to set up a tutoring appointment or something. So this is also something that you can build into I build it into discussion boards and assignment reflections. And if students do well on, I'll say something like, okay, what went well with this assignment? How did you plan for this assignment? What might you do differently if you were going to complete this assignment the next time? And they'll say, well, you know what, I realized I should have started way earlier, or I really didn't have all the resources I needed because I didn't put time into the planning. And so then when it got to monitoring my performance, I realized, oh, I didn't really put together a decent plan. And so, it's not working that well. So, but monitoring their performance is not necessarily something that students will naturally do, but you can build in those questions. And then it makes it part of the course and part of the assignments, and sort of takes them along that self-directed learning cycle. And then as you continue to build those reflections in the monitoring performance questions, they will continue to get more proficient at it. And then, hopefully by the time they're done with the class, or as they continue in their program, they'll continue to get more independent and self-regulated. And what I find is that when I build these different types of questions and techniques into my courses and assignments, I get a lot less questions from students about it. They're not as confused about assignments and instructions, and because they've kind of been reflecting, because they've had to answer these various questions, and they've been developing these skills that they don't necessarily realize they're developing, but it makes it a better learning environment for the students, and you get a lot less confusion and questions from the students. And so they can really focus more on that complex content than struggling and not kind of knowing where to go from a certain point. And the research shows that when students monitor their own performance and they try to explain to themselves what they're doing, how they're doing it, what do they need to do to be successful, that those students monitoring their own performance have greater learning gains than students who don't monitor their own performance. And students who were taught to ask themselves these self-comprehension monitoring questions as they're reading, then they learn to kind of self-monitor, and they learn more from what they read as well. So it's a really important skill in terms of their learning development. And reflecting and adjusting is important. That's the last phase of that self-directed learning cycle. And they can ask themselves, how is their performance going? Even when they're monitoring their performance, as we discussed on the prior slide, they might not adjust their approach. And sometimes there's might be some resistance because they might feel comfortable using a technique that they learned in earlier courses, that they learned in high school. They might not trust that they should change their techniques. They say, well, this has been working for me, so I'm just going to keep doing it that way. And it must be right because I used it for 4 years in high school. So there might be some resistance to them changing techniques. They might not trust that they can be successful on another technique. They might not be aware of techniques that are available. They could find them out from the tutoring center. When I used to complete my advanced math homework when I was an undergrad right outside a tutoring center, and I rarely had to use the tutoring center, but I just knew they were there, and it made me feel like I could be more successful and I was more relaxed. But sometimes I'd go in there and ask the graduate assistants questions, and they would say, oh, well, try this technique. And I'd say, oh, no, I didn't know that. The technique I was using wasn't working, but this one is. So, I appreciate your help with that. And students need to ask, are they learning the content? Are they successfully solving the problems? If not, what do they need to do to adjust? Where can they get help? Do I know a different technique, or can I get some help from the professor? Maybe study groups in the class, or NIU even has a lot of online resources to help as well. And when we look at the research, it shows that good problem solvers will use a variety of techniques to solve a problem rather than continuing to use that same strategy that doesn't work. So good problem solvers will say, okay, you know what, this didn't work, so let me try this other way, or let me see if I can get a resource to do this in a different way. But people who are less proficient at problem solving might continue to use that same ineffective technique, and it doesn't work, and they're not making changes. So it's important that they realize that they should explore different options. And some issues that can arise is students might not make changes if they perceive that the cost of changing their technique is too high. So if they think that, oh my goodness, I have to learn this whole new process, and I started this assignment today at 6 o'clock and it's due at 11:59, and I just don't have time to go to the tutoring center or something. So they say, okay, well, that's not possible, so I'll just do what I can and get something in. Or they might not want to spend that extra time, or they might not feel proficient in this new technique. And so, you know, we need to tell them that encourage them to learn these new techniques, encourage them to be open, and let them know that, yes, there are going to be challenges, that's part of the learning process, but we're there to support them. So if students see that if they believe that the payoff is worth their extra effort, then they will be more likely to try these different techniques and move toward more of that growth mindset than the fixed mindset. And so those are the different phases of the self-directed learning cycle. And if you're thinking about courses that you teach, what's one thing that you think you might do that students could do to practice the self-directed learning cycle, and what you as an instructor could do to support students with that self-directed learning cycle?
This is Elise. One thing that I am in the DMP program now, so I'm a student and an instructor. But one thing that I really liked in my DMP program is that the teachers would have us document like part of the assignment in Blackboard under the discussion board, and then get feedback from our peers. And then the actual assignment, so that would be like due by Wednesday, and then the actual assignment would be due by Sunday, so that we could get feedback from them and still kind of force us to work on it. So I think that's helpful and something that I could use. It doesn't really work in the format I'm teaching now, but in the future, hopefully something like that where students are forced to kind of do something halfway through the week and then finish it up at the end of the week.
That's exactly correct. And as I said, I do that in my research course, and you know, it facilitates them getting something done by an interim time period, and then they get some feedback, they get some suggestions, they are monitoring their performance, and then, like you said, they submit that final assignment at the end of the week, and they've gotten that feedback. And you know, there's built-in planning because they have to have it done by a certain time. There's built-in assessment of the task and they have to complete this and share it with their colleagues. So yes, that's a great suggestion, Elise. Thank you. Does anyone else have anything they would like to ask or share before we wrap up today? I know we covered a lot, and I appreciate your attention and engagement. And remember that the Center for Innovative Teaching and Learning is always available to help you. We have many workshops, and we support online and face-to-face and hybrid teaching. So get a hold of us because we are there to help you, and we are happy to help you.
Thank you so much, Yvonne.
Okay,
Thank
thank you,
you.
everyone. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Yvonne.
Thank you, Jeanette. Bye.
Bye-bye.